Before we begin, I need you to hear this carefully. If you've been feeling disconnected lately, if people have been drifting away, if life suddenly feels quieter, if you've been asking God why everything feels hidden, this message may be for you. Chosen one. What if this season is not rejection? What if heaven has not abandoned you, but separated you? Because there is a phase nobody talks about, the hidden phase, the season where nothing looks like it's moving, but everything is changing. You start losing interest in things that once excited you. You feel alone in rooms full of people. You begin questioning everything. And for a moment, you wonder if something is wrong with you. But what if nothing is wrong? What if this is the moment your old identity can no longer follow where your future is taking you? Because before elevation, there is separation. Before clarity, there is silence. Before purpose, there is preparation. And if you're in that place right now, don't click away. Because by the end of this message, you may finally understand why God removed people, closed doors, and led you into a season nobody else understands. Stay until the end. This could explain everything. And once you understand this first truth, everything begins to make sense. This separation was not an accident. You've been trying to understand what changed, not all at once, not dramatically, just slowly, quietly, almost in ways nobody else could notice. But you noticed. You noticed the conversations became fewer, the messages became shorter, the invitations slowed down. People who once checked on you became distant. Rooms that once felt alive suddenly began feeling empty. Places you once loved no longer carry the same feeling. And people who once understood you now seem unable to reach where you are emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. You try to explain it, but words fail. Because how do you explain a transition you do not fully understand yourself? And deep down, there is a question you keep carrying, a question you may not even say out loud. God, why does this season feel so lonely? Why does growth feel like distance? Why does becoming feel like losing? Why does moving forward sometimes feel quieter than staying where I was? But what if this is not rejection? What if this is preparation? What if the very thing you thought was loss is actually protection? Because there are seasons in life that cannot begin until separation happens. There are doors that only open after certain attachments release. There are versions of you that only emerge after familiar environments become too small. Look closely at creation. Seeds are separated before they become harvest. Gold is separated before it becomes pure. Roots grow in darkness before trees appear in daylight. And people chosen for deeper purpose often enter hidden places before they step into visible ones. That hidden season does not mean absence. It means formation. You keep looking around, wondering why nobody understands this version of you, why nobody seems able to connect the way they used to, why certain conversations now feel exhausting, why being around people sometimes makes you feel more alone. But maybe they are not supposed to understand this version of you, because this version of you is still being formed, and unfinished things are often misunderstood. You are in the hidden phase, not forgotten, not abandoned, hidden. There is a difference. When something is hidden by fear, it shrinks. When something is hidden by God, it grows. Think about that. A seed disappears into the ground. To everyone watching, it looks buried. But from another perspective, it is being prepared. And maybe that is where you are. Not buried, planted. Because before great moments of transformation in Scripture, there was often a season nobody celebrated. Quiet years, invisible years, years without applause, years where progress could not be measured, years where it looked like nothing was happening. Yet everything was happening. Character was forming, identity was strengthening, direction was becoming clearer. The outside looked still, but internally, everything was changing. And maybe that is why this season feels uncomfortable, because you are measuring your life by visible movement. but God is measuring it by internal transformation. You are asking, "What am I doing?" And heaven may be asking, "Who are you becoming?" Those are different questions. The old patterns no longer fit. The old approval no longer satisfies. The old identity feels too small. You cannot think the way you used to. You cannot chase the way you used to. You cannot force what no longer feels aligned, and because of that, part of you misses who you used to be. Not because you want to go back, but because familiar pain sometimes feels safer than unfamiliar growth. But you are not meant to go back, because separation only feels painful when we believe our old environment was our destination. It was not. Your environment was a classroom, not your future. It taught you, it stretched you, it revealed things, but it was never meant to contain who you are becoming. You have not been isolated because you failed. You have been separated because you are changing. And change requires distance. Distance from noise, distance from pressure, distance from expectations, distance from people who only knew your old language. Because there are parts of your destiny that cannot survive constant explanation. There are things being built inside you that grow stronger in silence. That is why this season feels sacred. You are learning something bigger than achievement. You are learning who you are when nobody is watching, who you are when nobody claps, who you are when no one confirms you, who you are when external validation disappears. And that lesson changes everything. Because once you stop needing constant confirmation, your life becomes impossible to control. You become free. Free to choose peace, free to follow conviction, free to become. This hidden phase is not empty, it is holy. Stay. Do not rush it. Do not escape it. Do not mistake stillness for absence, because something is being built inside you. And before purpose becomes clear, there is often another unexpected thing that happens. People begin to leave. And in the next chapter, you may finally understand why God removes people before He reveals purpose. One of the hardest truths to accept is this: not every departure is a loss. Some departures are instructions, and that truth can be painful to receive. Because we naturally assume that if someone leaves, something must have gone wrong. We replay conversations, we question ourselves, we wonder if we should have explained more, tried harder, held on longer. But sometimes the lesson is not to hold tighter. Sometimes the lesson is to release. Because not everyone who walks with you is meant to finish the journey with you. You thought everyone who entered your life was permanent. You believed shared history guaranteed shared destiny. You assumed that because someone understood one version of you, they would automatically understand the next. But seasons change. And when seasons change, relationships change too. That does not automatically mean people are bad. It does not mean betrayal. It does not mean someone failed. It means assignments evolve. People can be right for one season and not designed for the next. Some people arrive to teach. Some arrive to support. Some arrive to reveal. Some arrive to challenge. And some arrive only long enough to prepare you for where you are actually going. That realization is difficult, because growth does not only introduce new things, growth also creates endings, and endings require grief. You may have noticed something strange recently. The more you started growing internally, the more disconnected you felt externally. Conversations became shallow. Topics that once excited you now feel empty. Places that once felt alive feel smaller. You became quieter. Not because you lost your voice, but because your spirit stopped competing for attention. You started craving depth, meaning, truth, peace. You stopped forcing conversations, stopped chasing replies, stopped over-explaining yourself, stopped trying to make people understand what only time could reveal. And suddenly, people began saying, "You changed." But what they often mean is, "You no longer behave in ways that make me comfortable." Because change shifts dynamics. Growth creates distance, not because you become better than people, but because your attention changes, your values change, your priorities shift. You begin valuing peace over approval, truth over performance, purpose over popularity, depth over attention, presence over noise. And that transition can feel lonely. Because your identity used to depend on being understood. Now it is learning to depend on being aligned. That shift changes everything. Because when you stop needing everyone to understand you, you become available to understand yourself. This hidden phase reveals something powerful. Who stays when there is nothing to gain? Who honors your process? Who respects your silence? Who gives you room to become? Who allows transformation without demanding explanation? Those questions matter. Because not everyone is comfortable with your growth, not because they dislike you, but because your change may challenge their comfort, and that is okay. You are not responsible for remaining small to preserve familiarity. Sometimes God removes noise so you can hear your own soul again. For years, you adapted, you adjusted, you explained, you carried expectations, you shrank your desires, you became who people expected, you became available, predictable, manageable, you learned how to perform. But hidden seasons interrupt performance. Now there is no audience, no constant feedback, no applause, no validation, only truth. And truth asks difficult questions. What do you actually want? Not what impresses people, not what avoids disappointment. What do you actually want? Who are you becoming? What parts of yourself still exist only to survive? What are you still carrying that no longer belongs to you? Whose expectations still control your decisions? Because separation exposes attachment, and attachment is not always love. Sometimes attachment is fear, fear of being forgotten, fear of disappointing others, fear of becoming unfamiliar, fear of standing alone, fear that if people leave, you lose value. But chosen one, you are discovering something greater. You are discovering that your identity cannot be borrowed. It must be built, and hidden places build foundations. Because borrowed identity collapses under pressure. Built identity remains. You are becoming someone who does not need permission to grow, someone who does not confuse attention with connection, someone who no longer chases acceptance at the cost of peace. The person emerging from this season will not chase validation. They will carry presence. They will move with clarity. They will recognize doors instead of begging for access. They will stop forcing what requires force. Because purpose is not found through noise. Purpose becomes visible when distraction leaves. And something surprising happens after distraction leaves. At first, it feels uncomfortable, then unfamiliar, then quiet, then, eventually, you begin hearing things you could not hear before. Your thoughts, your emotions, your desires, your truth. And that is when you realize this season was never only about who left. It was about what remained after everyone became quiet. Because in the absence of noise, something unexpected begins to happen. The silence starts speaking. And in the next chapter, you may finally understand this. The silence is changing you. Chosen one. You expected transformation to feel dramatic. You thought growth would arrive with obvious signs, clear answers, big opportunities, sudden breakthroughs, a moment where everything finally made sense. You thought change would announce itself. But most transformation does not arrive that way. Most transformation arrives quietly. It happens in ordinary mornings, long walks, unanswered questions, unexpected tears, moments nobody sees, moments that do not look important at first, moments that seem too small to matter. Yet later, you realize those quiet moments changed everything. Because transformation rarely begins when life becomes louder. It begins when life becomes quiet enough for you to hear yourself again. And that is where many people misunderstand hidden seasons. They assume silence means nothing is happening. But silence is often where the deepest work begins. This hidden phase is not punishment, it is recalibration, not rejection. Recalibration. You are not being moved away from life. You are being realigned within it. Something inside you is becoming more sensitive, more awake, more aware. Your spirit is becoming sensitive again. You are noticing things you once ignored. Your energy, your habits, your reactions, your boundaries, your environment, your inner conversations, the things you tolerate, the things you avoid, the things you pretend do not affect you. You are becoming aware. And awareness changes everything, because once you see clearly, you cannot return to unconscious living. Once you notice a pattern, you cannot pretend it does not exist. Once you recognize exhaustion, you stop calling it productivity. Once you recognize emptiness, you stop calling it success. Once you recognize performance, you stop calling it identity. Awareness changes the relationship you have with your own life, and that can feel uncomfortable. Because awareness asks for honesty. There is a reason silence feels uncomfortable. Silence removes distraction, and without distraction, truth becomes louder. You begin hearing what fear sounds like. You hear the thoughts you used to outrun. You hear the pressure you placed on yourself. You hear expectations that never belonged to you. You hear how often you apologize for existing. You hear the places where you abandoned yourself to be accepted. You begin hearing what exhaustion sounds like. Not physical exhaustion, soul exhaustion. The kind that comes from carrying too much for too long. The kind that comes from always being available, always being strong, always being understanding, always performing. You begin hearing what longing sounds like. Longing for rest, longing for meaning, longing for peace, longing to stop pretending, longing to finally become who you are without fear. And eventually, after enough silence, you begin hearing what peace sounds like. Not excitement, not noise, not constant activity. Peace. And peace feels strange at first, because many people mistake chaos for being alive. When life becomes calmer, they become uncomfortable, not because peace is wrong, but because it feels unfamiliar. Many people avoid hidden seasons because hidden seasons reveal truth, and truth is uncomfortable before it becomes freeing. Truth reveals where you are exhausted. Truth reveals where you are pretending. Truth reveals where you are afraid. Truth reveals where you are disconnected from yourself. But truth is where healing begins. Healing is not becoming someone new. Healing is removing what covered who you already were. Healing is returning to clarity, returning to honesty, returning to peace, returning to yourself. Chosen one, your sensitivity is not weakness. Your depth is not weakness. Your desire for meaning is not weakness. Your need for peace is not weakness. Your refusal to continue living disconnected from yourself is not weakness. These are signals. Something inside you refuses to settle. That is not failure. That is awakening. You may feel behind. You may compare yourself. You may wonder why others seem ahead, why they seem more certain, more successful, more visible. But hidden seasons are not measured publicly. People celebrate fruit, but nobody celebrates roots. Roots do not compete with branches. Roots prepare. Roots go deeper before life grows higher. And when visible growth finally comes, people call it sudden. People call it luck. People call it timing. But you will know. You will remember the nights, the uncertainty, the surrender, the rebuilding, the uncomfortable honesty, the silent victories nobody applauded. Nothing about your future will be accidental. This season is teaching endurance, and endurance creates capacity, because the life you are moving toward requires a version of you that does not collapse under pressure, a version of you that can carry peace, carry responsibility, carry purpose, carry visibility without losing yourself. That version is being formed now, quietly, deeply, faithfully. Do not despise hidden growth. Invisible preparation often creates visible impact. But here is what nobody tells you. The silence is not only revealing who you are, it is revealing how you have been living. And for many chosen ones, that realization becomes uncomfortable. Because you begin to discover something unexpected. You are not only carrying pressure, you are surviving. Surviving expectations, surviving relationships, surviving responsibilities, surviving life. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it. Because the next stage of your transformation is not learning how to endure more. It is learning how to stop living in survival mode. And that is where this hidden phase begins changing everything. Chosen one. There is something deeper happening beneath everything you can currently explain. This season is not only changing your surroundings, it is changing the way you exist inside yourself. God is not simply rearranging people, opportunities, and circumstances. He is restoring the places within you that learned how to survive but never learned how to rest. For too long, survival became your normal, not because you wanted it, but because somewhere along the journey, surviving felt safer than trusting. You adapted. You became strong. You became responsible. You became independent. You became the one who figured things out. You learned to anticipate disappointment before it arrived. You learned to lower expectations to avoid pain. You learned to earn affection instead of receiving it. You learned to carry emotional weight quietly. You learned to stay prepared for loss. You learned to remain alert even during moments that should have felt peaceful. And eventually, survival stopped feeling like a season. It started feeling like your personality. You forgot what it felt like to soften. You forgot what it felt like to trust ease. You forgot that living and surviving are not the same thing. Because survival mode can look successful from the outside. People may even praise it. They call it discipline. They call it independence. They call it resilience. But inside, you feel tired in places sleep cannot reach. You accomplish things but rarely enjoy them. You arrive at moments you once prayed for and immediately begin worrying about losing them. You cannot fully receive because your body is still preparing for danger. That is why this hidden season feels uncomfortable. Because what is being removed is not only external pressure, it is internal pressure. Pressure to perform, pressure to prove, pressure to earn, pressure to control outcomes, pressure to always have the answer, pressure to never need anyone. And when those patterns begin dissolving, it can feel unfamiliar, even empty. Because the identity built around surviving begins asking, if I am not constantly fighting, who am I? If I am not always achieving, what gives me value? If I stop carrying everything, will everything fall apart? But this season is revealing something important. You were never designed to live in permanent self-protection. You were never meant to build your entire life around avoiding disappointment. You were never created to abandon yourself in exchange for acceptance. You were never called to perform your worth. You already possess it. That is why things are slowing down. And slowing down can feel threatening at first, because survival became attached to speed. Move quickly, decide quickly, fix quickly, produce quickly, stay distracted, stay busy, stay ahead. But peace moves differently. Peace does not rush. Peace observes. Peace receives. Peace allows. Peace listens. And at first, peace feels unfamiliar before it feels safe. There may be days where silence feels uncomfortable, days where rest feels undeserved, days where boundaries feel selfish, days where doing less feels wrong. But those feelings are not always truth. Sometimes they are withdrawal symptoms from a life built around pressure. You are learning something your old self never had permission to learn. Rest is not laziness. Boundaries are not rejection. Silence is not abandonment. Space is not failure. Receiving is not weakness. And slowing down does not mean you are falling behind. It means you are finally noticing yourself. This season is teaching you to experience life differently, not through force, not through constant striving, but through alignment. You are learning to ask different questions, not, how do I earn more, but what actually matters, not, how do I control everything, but what can I trust, not, how do I survive, but how do I build? Chosen one, you are becoming emotionally available to your own future, because your future cannot fully enter a life that is overcrowded with old survival strategies. You cannot carry tomorrow while reacting from yesterday. You cannot create from exhaustion. You cannot build from fear. You cannot receive peace while remaining loyal to chaos. That is why this process matters. You are not being weakened. You are being strengthened from the inside, not hardened. Strength without healing becomes control. Strength without softness becomes isolation. Strength without peace becomes performance. Strength with healing becomes wisdom. Strength with peace becomes stability. Strength with awareness becomes vision. Notice what no longer attracts you. Notice what no longer excites you. Notice what conversations leave you empty. Notice what environments drain your energy. Notice what habits suddenly feel too small for who you are becoming. Do not ignore those signals. That awareness is evidence. You are changing. You are no longer interested in endless survival. You are preparing to build, and builders require foundations. Your future cannot rest on exhaustion. Your purpose cannot grow inside constant urgency. Your next season needs stability more than speed. So this hidden phase is creating space. Space for peace, space for vision, space for purpose, space for joy, space for healthy relationships, space for clarity, space to finally experience life instead of constantly defending yourself from it. You are not becoming less, you are becoming available for more. But as this shift begins, something unexpected happens. When external survival quiets down, internal noise becomes easier to hear. Old fears, old beliefs, old reactions, old stories. The battle does not disappear, it becomes visible. And that is where the next phase begins. Because some of the hardest battles are not around you, they are within you. And that is exactly what we will enter next. The battle you feel is often internal. People think spiritual warfare always looks external. They imagine resistance always appears as obvious opposition. Closed doors, difficult people, unexpected setbacks, visible conflict. And sometimes those things happen. But often, the greatest battle is not around you. It is within you. Not demons, not opposition, identity. Because when your life begins changing, old versions of you try to return. Not because you are moving backward, but because growth always activates resistance. And resistance is not always external. Sometimes resistance sounds familiar. Sometimes resistance speaks in your own voice. Old fears, old labels, old stories, old definitions of who you thought you had to be. Suddenly, thoughts begin appearing. Maybe nothing is happening. Maybe I'm wasting time. Maybe I'm overthinking this. Maybe I missed my opportunity. Maybe everyone else is moving ahead. Maybe I should go back to what felt familiar. Maybe this hidden season means I failed. But chosen one. Those thoughts do not automatically mean you are losing. Sometimes they simply mean you are changing. Because growth always feels uncertain before it feels obvious. Think about it. Every new version of your life requires leaving something behind. And leaving familiar things, even unhealthy familiar things, can feel uncomfortable. Your mind wants familiarity. Your mind prefers certainty. Your mind wants proof. Your mind wants predictable outcomes, but your destiny requires expansion. And expansion feels risky. Expansion asks you to trust before everything makes sense. Expansion asks you to become before everyone understands. Expansion asks you to move without having every answer. That can feel uncomfortable. Not because you are weak, but because transformation stretches identity. And stretching can feel like breaking until you realize you are becoming stronger. So hear this clearly. You are not failing because you still have doubts. You are human. You are not failing because you still feel fear. You are human. You are not failing because some days feel harder than others. You are human. Growth is not the absence of uncertainty. Growth is learning not to obey uncertainty. Courage is not absence of fear. Courage is continuing while fear still speaks. Courage is showing up while still healing. Courage is staying open after disappointment. Courage is choosing peace when chaos feels familiar. Courage is becoming who you are before you fully feel like that person. Chosen one. You are stronger than you realize. Look at everything you already survived. Look at the moments that should have ended you. Look at the disappointments. Look at the silent battles. Look at the seasons where nobody knew how much you were carrying. Look at the days where all you could do was keep moving. And yet, here you are, still seeking, still becoming, still asking deeper questions, still opening your heart, still refusing to quit. That matters. Because there is something inside you that refuses to disappear. Something that keeps reaching. Something that keeps believing. Something that keeps saying, there must be more. Protect that part of yourself, because that part is important. The hidden phase teaches trust, not certainty. Trust. Trust that unseen progress still counts. Trust that healing is still progress. Trust that rest is still progress. Trust that changing internally is still movement. Trust that delayed answers are not denied purpose. Trust that becoming takes time. Trust that what feels invisible today may become obvious later. Because not all growth announces itself. Some growth reveals itself quietly. One decision at a time, one boundary at a time, one moment of honesty at a time. Chosen one. Your future self is being built by decisions nobody applauds. The decision to keep going, the decision to forgive, the decision to rest, the decision to remain open, the decision to stop abandoning yourself, the decision to stop explaining everything, the decision to believe again, the decision to choose peace, the decision to trust process over panic. Those decisions create destiny. People often imagine destiny as one dramatic moment, but destiny is usually built through ordinary choices repeated consistently. And one day, people will admire your confidence, they will notice your peace, they will ask how you became so grounded, they will notice the strength, but they will never fully see the hidden phase that created it. They will not see the inner conversations, the surrender, the rebuilding, the nights you kept going quietly. This season is sacred. Protect it. Protect your attention, protect your peace, protect your growth, protect what is becoming clear inside you. Because your next chapter needs what this chapter is building. And here is something important. When identity begins healing, when fear begins losing control, when old patterns stop feeling normal, something unexpected begins to happen. You start noticing subtle changes. You stop chasing, you stop forcing, you stop settling. You feel different before life looks different, and many people misunderstand that moment. They think something is ending. But often, that is the first sign that something is about to begin. Because breakthrough rarely arrives the way people expect. It often begins quietly. And in the next chapter, you may finally recognize the signs that you are closer than you think. What if the discomfort you feel right now is not evidence that something is wrong, but evidence that something is changing? What if this tension, this uncertainty, this strange feeling of being between who you were and who you are becoming, is not failure? What if it is transition? Because breakthrough rarely arrives the way people expect. Most people imagine breakthrough as sudden clarity, instant answers, immediate results, open doors, visible success. But often, real breakthrough begins quietly, internally, almost invisibly. Before anything changes around you, something begins changing within you, and that inner change can feel confusing. Because for a while, your old life still looks familiar, but your spirit no longer responds to it the same way. You notice things that never bothered you before, conversations that suddenly feel empty, habits that no longer satisfy you, goals that once consumed you but now leave you questioning, places that feel too small, patterns that feel too heavy, ways of thinking that no longer fit. And at first, you may interpret that feeling as dissatisfaction, but often, it is expansion. You are not becoming ungrateful. You are becoming aware. Awareness changes everything, because once you see differently, you cannot fully return to what no longer reflects who you are becoming. That is one of the first signs of breakthrough. You stop chasing automatically. You stop reacting automatically. You stop needing external validation to confirm internal truth. You begin asking deeper questions, not, what do people expect from me, but what is actually aligned for me? Not, what can I achieve, but what kind of life am I creating? Not, how do I impress, but what truly brings peace? That shift matters, because breakthrough is not simply getting more. Breakthrough is becoming someone capable of sustaining what comes next. And growth changes your relationship with everything. Your standards rise, not from pride, from clarity. You no longer confuse availability with connection. You no longer confuse attention with love. You no longer confuse movement with progress. You no longer confuse being needed with being valued. You begin protecting your focus, protecting your peace, protecting your energy. Not because you think you are above people, but because you finally understand that where attention goes, life follows. And suddenly, You notice who leaves you feeling drained, who constantly pulls you backward, who only understands the version of you that stayed small. You notice who inspires growth, who creates peace, who respects boundaries, who celebrates your expansion instead of resisting it. You begin choosing differently, not from fear, not from judgment, but from alignment. This is maturity. And maturity often feels lonely before it feels freeing, because growth sometimes changes your relationships. It changes routines. It changes desires. It changes conversations. It changes what you tolerate, and that shift can create unexpected emotions, because becoming is beautiful. But becoming also requires release. That is why breakthrough seasons are emotional. Not because you are unstable, but because your identity is reorganizing. You begin grieving, not only people, not only opportunities, but versions of yourself. The version that accepted less, the version that stayed quiet, the version that overgave, the version that performed, the version that survived, the version that thought exhaustion meant purpose. And grieving can feel confusing, because part of you misses what another part of you knows you cannot return to. But grieving is not regression. Grieving is evidence that something mattered, and releasing does not dishonor what once served you. It creates room for what comes next. Release creates space. Space creates capacity. Capacity welcomes new life. That is why closed doors do not always mean rejection. Sometimes they reveal misalignment. Sometimes they expose timing. Sometimes they remove what comfort would never let you leave. And sometimes they protect what preparation is still building. Chosen one, pay attention to the signs. You feel different because you are different. You cannot think your way back into old seasons. You cannot shrink to fit old environments. You cannot unknow what growth has revealed. You are not lost. You are being repositioned. You are becoming less reactive, less desperate, less attached to immediate outcomes, more intentional, more rooted, more aware, more present, more alive. And although the process feels hidden, something is forming, something is preparing, something is aligning. You may not see evidence yet, but your life is already changing. Because breakthrough always begins before arrival. First, the internal shift, then the external manifestation. First, the preparation, then the unveiling. First, the hidden work, then the visible season. And one day, you will look back at this chapter and realize the confusion was not punishment. The waiting was not abandonment. The silence was not emptiness. Something was being developed where nobody could see. Something was being protected. Something was being formed. And when the moment finally comes, you will understand that the hidden season was never meant to bury you. It was preparing to reveal you. And that is where the next chapter begins. When you finally understand why you were hidden. Chosen one. One day you will look back, and suddenly everything will make sense. You will understand why certain doors closed, why certain people left, why certain plans failed, why you felt delayed, because you will realize you were never being denied. You were being developed. There are things you prayed for that required a different version of you. A steadier version, a freer version, a healed version, a version that no longer abandons itself. That is what this season has been creating. You thought nothing was happening, but transformation was happening, quietly, daily, deeply. And now you carry something different. You carry peace. You carry discernment. You carry strength that does not need attention. You carry confidence that does not demand approval. That is real growth. Chosen one, do not rush the hidden phase, honor it, because hidden seasons reveal what visible success cannot: character, wisdom, depth, presence. This separation was never about making your life smaller. It was about making your capacity greater. You are not disappearing. You are emerging, not all at once, but intentionally. Trust the process, trust the silence, trust the becoming. You are not forgotten. You are being prepared. And when the time comes, you will not need to force doors. You will walk through the ones built for you. Until then, keep showing up, keep listening, keep becoming. Your hidden phase is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of the chapter that changes everything.